So, a little bit of a different video today. I just wanted to sit down and I wanted to tell my story of how I got into flight training. If you go back and watch a lot of the previous videos that I've posted on this channel before the flying videos, I used to do daily vlogs. And the other day I went and watched a bunch of them and I noticed how I really let my personality shine through those. And that's something that I've been lacking recently due to all of my videos being heavily scripted and heavily researched. So this one's going to be a little different in the fact that I'm just going to sit down and have a conversation and talk about how I got into flight training. So when I was, I think, a junior in high school, I got an ad for a local flight school that was doing discovery flights. I begged my parents to do it, and I did it, and I absolutely loved it. I think a big reason that I did it was because I thought it made me look cool that I could fly planes or something like that. But I did it, and I loved it. And back then, I started flying while I was in high school. I did about 20 hours of flight time, but that was in a plane, a little tiny plane called a 162 Skycatcher. Looking back on it, I think that was the hardest plane I've ever had to fly. It was a total blast to fly. It was a horrible plane to learn in. So I think about 6 months, I got about 20 hours of flight time, and then I decided, well, this isn't for me. So I took a break from it and I quit. And then my senior year of high school rolled around and I graduated high school in 2020. And if I'm sure you remember, something happened during that year called the pandemic. So I graduated in the midst of the pandemic and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that college probably wasn't the best option for me right off the bat because I was a horrible student. So from there, I just started kind of looking at random jobs that I could do to kind of get my feet wet. And I stumbled across FedEx was hiring at the Indianapolis airport. So I ended up going and working for them. And I loved that job. In fact, the two videos that I made about working at FedEx were my most viewed videos on this channel before I started posting the flying videos. I worked night shift and it was in the middle of winter. And one day I was just sitting out on the ramp loading probably a 767 or something. And I saw the pilots roll up in a little mini bus with their nice hot coffee. And they got right off the nice warm bus and walked right up into the nice warm airplane. And it kind of clicked to me in that moment that I no longer wanted to be the person loading the airplane. I wanted to be the person flying it. So a lot of the days at FedEx, I would work about 9-10 p.m. to about 7 a.m. So for a while, I would work my night shift and then I would leave that shift and I would drive to the airport and do a flight lesson after that shift at like 8 a.m. Totally exhausted. So I did that for a month or so and I decided, look, I'm never going to get this done unless I focus on it. So I left FedEx and I pursued my private pilot's license full time. Did that, passed the check ride, and then I was kind of back to, well, now what do I do? In a big part of my mind, I knew that I wanted to fly, but I also didn't have the energy or the motivation to really pursue the other licenses after I was just grinding for my private for the last 6 months. So I took a little bit of a break, and then eventually I decided I want to go to ATP. So then I enrolled at ATP, and I did my instrument and my commercial there. So I did my instrument down in St. Pete out of KPIE. Or KPI, lived down there for about 6 weeks, I think it was, grinded out my instrument. And then when I was living down there, knowing that I couldn't have a job while I was in the ATP program, I realized that living in Florida is outrageously expensive and I was broke. So after that, I decided to move back home to Indianapolis and go to ATP's Greenwood location to complete my commercial. So I did my commercial through ATP, and then this is the one decision that I regret in my flight training experience so far looking back on it. I decided to leave ATP to pursue my CFI externally. And it ended up taking me a year to complete my CFI, whereas if I would have just stuck with ATP, it would have taken me like 3 weeks to a month. I still kick myself for that, but hey, that's one of the decisions we got to live with. So I left ATP and then I started doing my CFI training at the same Part 61 school that I did my private at. It was with an instructor that I hadn't worked with before, and great, fantastic guy. We worked together for about a year, and then I went and took my CFI check ride, and I got my CFI. I am so unbelievably thankful and unbelievably lucky that I got my CFI certificate in the midst of the 2023 hiring boom, because I essentially had a job waiting for me at the school that I did my training at, my private and my CFI training at. So I went and I started instructing at that school. And I instructed there just as a normal CFI for about a year. And then I got promoted to the assistant chief flight instructor, which is what I still currently do now at that school. At this point, I've had 9 check ride sends and 8 of them have passed on their first try. The only one that busted was someone that I sent right at the very, very beginning of my training before I really knew what I was doing. And if all goes well, the fingers crossed, I should get my Gold SEAL CFI within the next month or two, which is a huge accomplishment and super exciting for me. Kind of looking forward on where my journey is at. I currently have a CJO from one regional airline with another that reached back out and told me that they would like to move forward with my application. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. The one that I do have the CJO or conditional job offer from is giving me a start date of later this year / early next year. So that's kind of where we're at. By no means do I feel like I have an extraordinary story to tell. Like I think Fly with Trent, who completed everything in 29 days or whatever ridiculously short amount of time that was, or someone who did everything in 6 months all through ATP. I feel like I have a very average flying story. But the longer that you are flying and the longer that you are in it, the more that you will get asked, what got you into flying? And I think that hearing the different perspectives from every single person, yes, some people have more moving stories than others, but I think everybody's story is very important, at least to themselves. And when you start learning to talk to people, you realize that almost everybody has a different reason for wanting to get into this in the first place. That's my story. A lot of it, I guess technically on paper, all of it was Part 61. However, ATP is as close to being Part 141 as it can be without being classified as a 141. So I think another one of my regrets in flying is I really wish that I would have started making consistent YouTube videos back in the earlier days of flight training, because I think it would have been really neat to be able to look back and see the progression along every step of the way. And that's kind of something that I'm trying to do now as I'm in the shoes of a CFI. I do think that lately my videos have pivoted more towards like career outlooks and stuff like that, which I'm totally okay with. But I think it'll be really neat to look back on these videos in 5 to 10 years' times and see how things have progressed in my life, in my flying journey. So I know that this was not the most exciting version. I just wanted to sit down, have a conversation with no script, and just practice talking to the camera again, which is something that I have not done in a very long time without a script. So thank you all for watching. I hope that you choose to continue to join me on the rest of this flight training journey, and hopefully throughout the length of my entire career as we progress through the ranks. Hopefully I said something that motivated you. And I love seeing the comments that you guys leave telling me about what part of the journey you're in it. And I love even more when you tell me why you got into flying in the first place. So that's it for this video. Nice, short, kind of boring, in my opinion, video. But that's all I've got for you. And I'll see you next week.